I'm in both. I'm still trying to pull people from our TikTok live over to Twitch. So, see, look, we're doing it. I got a light. I'm professional. And it's fun. It's fun over on Twitch, I promise. If you don't have a Twitch, you should come. It's fun. We're going back to the news. Yesterday we did a little interim to talk about imperialism, but we're going back to the news. We talk about the news, and we talk about current events, and we read a mainstream news article, and then we talk about it from a left-wing political perspective. We got a bot. Polacco is a bot. That's actually a bot. That's what a bot sounds for. Try refreshing your Twitch. Just hit a refresh on the screen or something. For the bullying. Yay! Yay! I'm so glad you're over on Twitch. Yeah, Donald Trump's version of TikTok hates me. TikTok didn't hate me before that, I guess. I don't know. I mean, the people did. The liberals hated me. But the app now hates me. That's new. Both places, you and me both, Brody. Hydrate. We gotta hydrate right out of the gate. Hello, the queer bitch. Hi. Okay, are you guys going over there? Oh, how many people are on Twitch? We just opened it, I know. But if you guys can tell me in the stream. No, that's my friend Nova's art behind me. 116 is not bad. We got 116 over there. You guys, I think you guys should come. I think you guys should go over to Twitch for sure. 129. Yay. Okay. All right. I'm going to hang up here. We're going to go to Twitch. Join us on Twitch. It'll be fun. If you've never used Twitch before, I was new to Twitch. I really like it. I think it's really good. And it's fun little community, and it's easier to learn things with sources on Twitch because you can share your computer screen. I mean, it's just a way easier time than this. This is like a glitchy ass app where the green screen gets cropped and it doesn't even show what you want half the time. So, come on over. We'll see you there. Okay, I'm hanging up now. Bye. Okay. Hi. It's just us. Yeah, I am getting so many of these account strikes, videos removed, like over on my TikTok. It's real weird lately. It is real weird. I'm gonna check my comments on my most recent video while more people come in. So give me just a minute. I'm gonna put on the fork screensaver. Okay, I'm back. Somebody said they could tell just from my video recording that I seem sick. So we're locked in the house. I might be sick. I don't know. So we're locked inside today. And here's what's going on. If I'm not sick, I'm going to work from home. But if I still feel sick after the stream, I might just play video games to lay in bed and rest. And if that's the case, we can do a special video game stream. So, that's what's up. If I do my work, it's not a ton of stuff that I have to do. So we'll see. Please be sick. Sorry. Well, we could play The Sims on survival mode. I play Sims on this psycho mode where they're only allowed to dumpster dive for everything they need to live. And there's an easy version where they get to be a witch and then they can repair everything they pull out of the dumpster. But then there's a hard mode version where they're not a witch and they can't repair it. And it just has to be in good condition too. And then sometimes they die. So, Okay, let's get some options for what we want to talk about today. I'm going to go over to Politico because they still haven't kicked us out yet. And I'm going to open up some options. If you guys have news stories that are options you want to talk about, let me know. Yeah. We're going to pull up options and see what is up. American TikTok algorithm change. I don't know. After last January, I definitely noticed a huge difference, like immediately. So more Greenland. Oh, we do have an update on Greenland. We do have a news story that's Trump rules out using force to acquire Greenland. And then we also have NATO saying that Europe should be happy Trump is in charge. And Trump's Greenland tariffs could squeeze Hill Republicans. Trump says individuals will soon be prosecuted for the 2020 election. Okay, I've got some options. For us. Okay. So usually I like to do a domestic and an international issue. Okay, so I have some options. Hold on. Oh, Carney's speech. I haven't seen Carney's speech, though. Is it long? I feel like I'd really have to watch it first to be able to talk about it. All right, this is what we got. We've got, this isn't that interesting. The girls are fighting. Newsom and Trump are fighting. Blah, 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 blah. Hello, welcome. I don't feel great today, so I look a little like I don't feel great today. Trump saying Europe calls him daddy. Okay. Then Trump rules out using force to acquire Greenland. The president urged negotiations for, quote, a piece of ice, home to 60,000 Inuit native indigenous people. So that could be an option. What do we have here? NATO says Europe should actually be happy Trump is in charge. He is the military alliance chief of NATO, and this guy loves Trump. He looks like he would love Trump. Welcome, Angel. We also have, I don't think this is that interesting, the tariffs. Okay, this is interesting to me domestically. Trump says individuals will soon be prosecuted for 2020 election. And then also Minnesota being the eye of the Trump storm. And then Mamdani facing trade-offs in Union Build Affordable Housing. So here's what I think we should do. Let's do a poll for domestic first. And domestic, our options are Trump prosecuting people for the 2020 election, Minnesota and ICE, or Mamdani and housing. I think that's it. Oh, we have some options already going. Okay. We'll do them all. We'll see what people think from here. What is winning? Oh, electoral prosecution's winning. Okay, interesting. I'm interested in this too. It's a real race. Oh, I think that electoral prosecution is winning. And then for the foreign policy, we can talk about Greenland update because that has the second most. Does that sound good to you guys? I think that sounds good. We can do that. You wanted to vote Mamdani? Well, I jumped the gun. I'm sorry. I messed up. I messed Virgo up on that. I'm so sorry. Ooh. We'll see. We'll do a little. Okay. Let's start with this electoral prosecution, though. That looks like it's winning. Let's go there. While we wait for the poll to close, let's just do a little overview of this Mamdani thing really fast. You can't decide if he looks attractive. I mean, I think he's like hot in the way politicians are hot, right? Where you're like, well, this one's not a total monster. You know what I mean? It's like if anything's not just like a decrepit, decaying white man who looks like he crawled out from the trenches of like a lagoon that somehow is secretly responsible for a new outbreak of a deadly virus we haven't heard about. Like if they don't look like that, we're like, this one's kind of hot, right? So you know what I mean? No, it was my fault, Virgo. Okay, so electoral prosecution wins. We'll just do a brief overview of this article really fast, and then we'll jump into electoral prosecution. So don't make me linger on this one. He looks like a normal guy who goes to nightclubs. I can see that. Okay. David always gets mad at me on the podcast because I don't let him body shame people on the podcast. I'm like, we don't need to talk about it. So he would like that we're being a little petty about how politicians look. Now, so Zohar Mamdani vowed to dramatically expand affordable housing in New York City and to do it with union labor, but accomplishing these two goals at once will not be easy. And he wanted to build 200,000 new homes, union built, and geared towards people making less than $70,000 a year. And the total price tag would be $100 billion, which is wild because they have many. This is like a YIMBY thing too, but it's like there are many existing houses on the market, right? So unless something is done to decommodify housing in general, like, this is great. 200,000 people is great, but like New York City is a city of like 6 to 9 million people, somewhere in that range. Something more systemic and long-term has to be done. So on the flip side, when we have actual Marxist-Leninist candidates running in California, they're calling for anybody who owns more than 10 properties in California, they immediately have to liquidate everything above 10. Like immediately, and like flood the market with affordable housing, and then also build more affordable housing too. So I'm like, that feels more like a measured approach. So this is kind of interesting. Then I'm like, okay, this is like nice, but it's not really going to solve the problem, which is that housing is aggressively commodified, and there continues to be incentives in place to additionally commodify housing, right? Should be 5. I know. I was like, 10's real generous, you know? 10's like real nice. I think it should be 2. Like, you can have your house and you can have your family's fucking old lake house or whatever the fuck that you inherited from your grandpa. Whatever. That's fine. You know, you can have your one little property that your elderly aunt lives in that you take care of for her. Fine. But yeah, 10, I was like, that's more than generous. What normal fucking person owns 9 houses, right? Like, come on. But yeah, whatever. 10. And I'm like, that's fine. That's not what we're getting here with Mamdani, obviously. And they are already saying achieving the goal will be extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, according to more than a dozen former city officials, developers, and affordable housing advocates and budget experts Politico interviewed. Now, I will say out here in LA, somebody I know dated a guy who did city contracts for affordable housing, and he did the lighting design, and he made like 6 figures a year, which, like, whatever. I know that's not super rich in LA. But, you know, these people were paid super, super well, and these houses were really expensive, and they ended up not actually serving the communities at all, and they took forever and dragged out a long time. And basically it's just like these real estate companies get these buddy deals, right? So they get these buddy deals, and they get paid massive amounts from government contracts and grants to build housing. It's not actually about building affordable housing. So I could see this maybe going both ways. Maybe it's not actually as hard as all these people are saying if you do a different system. But the system they're used to, which is very, very corrupt and relies on a lot of inside kind of glad handing, maybe that does make it more difficult, you know? So this is an interesting thing. He stood by the union built commitment. Okay, cool. So they say the city's rental vacancy rate stands at less than 1% for apartments renting below $2,400 a month. That's what everybody wants, right? One of my friends definitely just moved out to New York, and the cheapest place she was able to find was a 1-bedroom for $2,700. She does have slightly more bougie taste than I do. But, you know, still I was like, damn, that's expensive. So the city is already on track to spend around $4 billion in affordable housing projects this year. But he wants to do $100 billion, which it needs. New York City does need affordable housing, definitely. But again, wouldn't it be more effective to just say, okay, you're not allowed to own more than 10 rental properties in New York anymore, and that would flood the market with affordable housing? That makes more sense to me, but this is kind of a YIMBY thing, you know, like, yes, in my backyard we'll build more houses, without addressing the fact that, like, we actually have houses. Like, we have more houses than people. There's just no incentive for people to be put in the houses by the corporate overlords. Communism is when communal cat milk bowl, berry balls, first time chat, very strong first time chat. Very strong first time chat. Okay, so that's that little thing. But now we'll get into what actually won. What actually won is this story, which interested me as well. So what we have here is, oh my God, what happened? I hit something on OBS and a new screen popped up I'd never seen before. There's a lot of empty buildings. There's a lot of empty warehouses. There's a lot of empty malls. I mean, There's any number of ways this could be addressed. And again, though, the issue is that if you do not decommodify housing, like if you do not make it profitable to own and trade houses like baseball cards, you will find that all of a sudden people are able to live in houses. And that's what China did. All right. Here, we're starting with our real deep dives today. Our domestic story we are looking at is Trump says individuals will soon be prosecuted for 2020 election. Trump has repeatedly and falsely claimed that former President Joe Biden did not actually win the 2020 presidential election. Now, before we get into this, I want to say two things. Number one, our claims of false elections, phony elections, election fraud in other countries are frequently used as the justification for us to invade them and overthrow their country. Look at what just happened with Maduro, right, in Venezuela. And we had a conversation about it here where only 9% of people inside of Venezuela approved of the opposition candidate, Machado, and her proxy, Gonzalez. So I find it hard to believe that Machado won that election. Or Gonzalez by proxy, right? But even if Maduro had lost the election, the United States by that point had spent so many years tampering with their access to information, their media control, their propaganda that they were receiving in Venezuela, that would it have really been a fair election anyway? And the example I gave is, look, if I ask you, do you want to go to Del Taco or Burger King for lunch today? Oh, by the way, 100 people just died of food poisoning from Del Taco. Which one do you want? And you're like, well, fucking not Del Taco. I guess I want Burger King. And then afterwards, I'm like, haha, psych, I just made that up. Are you going to feel like you really got to choose? And the answer is no, right? You didn't have enough information to actually make a decision. You were fed bad information, you were fed false information. And this is kind of what we do in other countries all the time to tamper with their elections. We just buy up media, inundate people with propaganda, telling them all sorts of bad things about whoever is running or in office that does not benefit us politically. And they feel like they voted, but they didn't really get the right information because we were controlling the flow of information to them. So this idea of election fraud, election tampering is always the justification we use to invade other countries and overthrow their leaders when they are democratically elected. But very often the only people tampering with the elections are us. Right. And I would argue that in the United States, our elections are inherently tampered with because, number one, you don't have access to all the candidates you want on the ballot. It's very, very hard to get a third party on the ballot. The Democratic Party sues third parties to keep them off of the ballots. Number two, massive amounts of propaganda and misinformation, right? The person who has the most amount of money contributed to the campaign, we see over and over and over again statistically, usually is the person who wins. I can back that up with a source if you guys want. We'll do that really fast. I'm trying to find something easy to look at really fast, but there's a lot of stories about this, that most of the time, just the person who spends the most money is the one who wins the election. Does electoral spending affect electoral outcomes? Oh, this one says the candidate share of the vote is not affected by campaign spending. This is actually interesting, though. I would want to read this one because I've never read this one in particular. And this is, too, why we say when you look up sources, you got to look up a whole bunch of different sources on this stuff. Because I've seen multiple sources that are like, it's almost directly. So this is fascinating. We're going to look at a lot of different things. Influence of big money. This one's from 1990. It also could have changed over time. We could be looking at sources from different times. Let's see. See if we can find just a summary of some findings here. Okay, so here we go. Plainly, the challenger's level of spending has a much larger influence on the behavior of fellow partisans. Okay, so this is actually what I have found in everything, is that the incumbent, anytime I've seen data on this, that one article, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I want to read that to see what they were talking about. But the data I consistently see is that the incumbent, their spending matters less if they're already in the office. But the challenger, if you want to challenge somebody who's in office, the amount of money you spend will directly affect your likelihood of beating them. So that's kind of what I usually find. And that's what's going on here, right? Their probability of returning to the fold between the two waves of surveys increases as campaign spending increases from nothing to $900,000. So this is more consistent with what I've seen. But the Science Direct article is very, very interesting. because it's the only one I've ever seen that says different. And that might be something for us to look at later. But probably not right now. This is, I don't know what this is. Okay. So that all brings into question, what is democracy? What does democracy look like? How is your democracy affected? How free is your democracy? How free are your elections anyway? That's the main thing that we want to talk about with this. So are elections free? What does democracy look like under capitalism? And can you really have a true and open election when the access to information is so tightly controlled and when campaign spending affects the results to the extent that it does? But I still have this bookmarked because I want to know the opposite opinion. So that is what's going on. Oh, posture check and hydrate. Sorry. Now, the idea then that the United States might also experience election fraud, that's actually not crazy. That's not out of nowhere. Those of us who were alive during the George W. Bush election knows that it turned out after massive recounts, there was a pretty good chance George W. Bush actually didn't win the election, but he was still our president. This is something that happened, I was young. George W. Bush. Recount. So this was like this massive issue that was going on back in the day. George W. Bush versus Gore. There were all of these recounts. Al Gore conceded the presidency. He was like, fine, I lost. And he turned it over to George W. Bush. Later, there were recounts that suggested that there was a chance that Gore actually would have won if he had not done that. This was contested back and forth. The study shows Bush likely would have won statewide recount of undervotes, even if the Supreme Court had not intervened to stop counting. But the lenient standard of vote counting advocated by Gore actually gave Bush his biggest lead. That's pretty interesting. And this was very, very politicized. You had some people claiming he definitely would have lost. You had some people claiming he definitely would have won. And just like actually with the campaign spending, this article says, no, it doesn't affect anything. Other articles are like, no, it affects everything. These are all just hyper politicized when it comes to our elections. Fallon going episode. Oh, Shenyang Billboard. Yay, I love it. So basically, the point of all this that I wanted to point out before we get into this is the idea that we have fair and free and true elections anywhere in the world is largely a myth. It's influenced by spending and it's influenced by power. It's influenced by media. And number two, the idea that we are able to measure what is and is not a stolen election is also a fallacy. I mean, we can't even get consistent data apparently over how much campaign spending influences election outcomes, or if this recount would have gone in this way or this way for this person, or how much misinformation or disinformation or propaganda affects people voting one way when they would have voted another had they only known the truth. So I just wanted to give that as the baseline before we get into this. President Donald Trump on Wednesday said individuals will soon be prosecuted for their role in what he called the rigged 2020 election, continuing his fixation on an election he lost. Speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, Trump said everybody now knows the 2020 presidential election was rigged and people will soon be prosecuted for what they did. Trump did not elaborate on who will be prosecuted or with what crimes they would be charged with, and the Department of Justice did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Trump has repeatedly and falsely claimed that former President Joe Biden did not actually win the 2020 presidential election, and that was the basis for the Capitol, right? That he was like, I'm the rightful winner, go Capitol. Was that correct? I want that to be fact checked. This was my understanding of it. Though Trump has claimed that there was widespread voter fraud, federal judges and election officials have refuted the claim. In 2020, Trump-appointed Attorney General William Barr also said there was no evidence of the alleged massive voter fraud. Trump has spent most of his return to office relitigating his defeat to Biden. The Department of Justice sued Fulton County, Georgia, which is home to Atlanta, for ballots and other election materials from 2020 at the end of last year. The DOJ has also sued dozens of largely Democratic-controlled states for access to their voter rolls. Trump has also repeatedly sought to assert federal control over elections and has seen an executive order attempting direct changes to the states largely blocked. The president on Wednesday also attributed the war in Ukraine in part to the 2020 election results. We are thousands of miles away separated by a giant ocean, he said. It is a war that never should have started, and it wouldn't have started if the 2020 U.S. presidential election wasn't rigged. So, lots to talk about here. All right, so the first thing I want to say is, imagine the 2020 election if it happened in North Korea. Imagine Donald Trump is Kim Jong-un, right? And he's like, I'm in charge of everything, because we're imagining we have a childlike understanding of the government structure of North Korea. And a new challenger is like, I want to run against you, even though that's not how their electoral system works. That's fine. We're imagining it is. And, then Kim Jong-un lost and was like, I didn't actually lose. And then all of this was happening. Would the United States claim, right, that was a sovereign nation? Or would we use that as justification to overthrow their nation? Or if it was reversed, I guess. So if Kim Jong-un was like, I actually won and this other guy didn't, and the other guy had politics that aligned more closely with the US government. That's a better analogy. Would the United States have been cool with that? Or would we have used it as an excuse to aggressively destabilize and overtake their country? Very obviously the second one, right? Very obviously, if the Capitol riots, if January 6th, if these claims of massive voter fraud happened in another country, and it was beneficial to us politically, advantageously for us, we would have used it as ultimate justification for us to do militarized warfare in that country and overtake them and install a puppet leader of our choice. So I think it's important to realize that these kinds of things happen in every country. Like election results are disputed, people fight, the girls are fighting. It is never justification for the United States to go overthrow that country. We have had multiple disputed elections here. Sometimes things actually were a little confusing and muddled, like the George W. Bush election. Sometimes it's because one of the politicians is a wackadoo drama queen who just wants attention all the time, like Donald Trump. Like, these things happen in other countries too. So I think this is important context for us to have, to remember that, like, when you hear of disputed election or fraudulent election or stolen election in another country, it could be real, it could be fake. It could be someone like Donald Trump flipping their shit over there, right? And it should just be total batshit, not real. It could be real. It could be very real. It could be real and influenced by the United States there. None of that is justification for us to go overthrow their government. Where have we been hypothetically involved in voter fraud? Literally everywhere. Literally anywhere the National Endowment for Democracy has donated money to democracy in other countries, we are trying to do election fraud. We are trying to influence their elections. Ukraine is a major example of that, actually. It's funny that Ukraine was mentioned in this. Venezuela as well, definitely. Mexico, we've tried to do that. We actually do this all the time. We try to run our own political candidates who are interested in us in these places. South Korea, definitely, over and over and over again. I mean, everywhere. So this is very, very common for us. Wackadoo drama queen. Sometimes politicians in other countries are also wackadoo drama queens. Right. So that's one of the things I think about with this a lot. That this stuff happens here, it happens in other countries. And second of all, that capitalism, regardless of your voting, regardless of your election results, capitalism is never actually able to offer you representative democracy. These people are never going to represent you, right? It doesn't matter which of these two fucking weirdo rich guys you voted for. Neither of them are going to represent your interests. And you don't know anything about them. You don't actually know about their values beyond I love money, right? Because it's a pageant. It's a pageant designed to sell you these people. It's not actually about who they are or what matters. No American is making an informed electoral decision. No American, when they decide what name to check on that box, actually knows what's going on. And that's because of the flow of information, how much information we receive here and we don't receive. So all of this, I think, is very, very important when we talk about democracy, when we talk about elections in the United States. They're all basically a show. And that's why major corporations donate money to both candidates often, right? Not all the time, but often, because they don't care. They just want whoever wins to be in their pocket. And there are, of course, that's not to say that there aren't differences between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They have different affect. They have different approach. We saw the Democratic Party, they love what we call the administrative state. They love USAID. They love USAGM. They love all of these big institutions. And the Republicans don't. They want to consolidate all that power over the federal branch. But at the end of the day, they still want to do the same thing, which is use whatever power they have politically in order to pull the puppet strings of other countries around the globe and make them dance for our capital interests, our corporate interests. So I think it's just very interesting. And people are very caught up in elections, and the people who also think electoralism is the end-all be-all, right? And they forget that it's not like we have free and fair elections. Because if we did, the first thing that would happen before every election would be a massive educational undertaking, because you can only make decisions as good as the info you have. And our country doesn't do that. They don't want us to have info. They don't want us to have more info. They want us to have less info. So very, very fascinating. Even Mom Donnie is an actor playing a part. Exactly. So I don't know. It's very, very interesting to me. Also, the the war in Ukraine thing is fascinating because I think it's pretty obvious Trump has used the situation in Ukraine to his advantage. Remember, he campaigned on wanting to end the war on Ukraine, be the peace president in Ukraine. He has really taken it upon himself to, put together this peace deal with Ukraine. But it's not as if the war in Ukraine isn't beneficial to Trump. It's not as if Trump wasn't arming Ukraine or arming Zelensky. I mean, he was getting into personal bickering fights with Zelensky. Very obviously, the war in Ukraine is a bipartisan issue as well because the United States found that it would be profitable. Information stifle is not intentional. No single group has access to those levers. I mean, so it's not a single group. You're right. It is the structural foundation of capitalism. And education starts at a local level, at a state level, with state legislatures. I've talked about this before. The Republican Party used to say it was their stated public policy to discourage critical thinking in public schools in Texas. That was their goal. And that's when it was the early 2000s, when Texas was controlled by the Republican Party. So it's not a lever, as you're thinking, right? It's more of a systemic approach to our value systems that takes decades to implement and see the effects played out over time. Our education standards here in the United States are extremely low. We've been lowering our education standards. Where other countries have been raising their education standards, we've been lowering them. Our colleges are having more people enter them with fewer skills, like things like writing essays, literacy skills, things like that. Our requirements to graduate from high school are pretty abysmal. I think you have to read at a 6th grade level last time I checked to be able to graduate from high school. Extremely low. These are not high standards, and that's because we as a culture do not value information. And additionally, the flow of information in the media affects this as well. So the flow of the information in the media is intentionally controlled by the rich, very obviously. That's always been the case. Rich people used to own newspapers, now they own news websites. Right? That's nothing new. So Hearst, the guy from Hearst Castle, the famous billionaire out here in California, he was a newspaper man. Newspaper and railroads, right? He controlled the media. That's what he did. And we see evidence of the CIA working with these people all the time. There's that article we always talk about here, Carl Bernstein's on the Media, that is quite literally the CIA paying journalists to control the information that the public receives. So it's not one lever, although the CIA did famously joke that they had one machine they could turn on to make the whole world believe whatever they wanted, and they called it the Wurlitzer. But it actually is a series of systemic policies introduced, right? National Endowment for Democracy, deciding for the CIA to start an NGO instead of doing things covertly and doing things overtly instead under the banner of the National Endowment for Democracy. That was a policy decision that was monumental in the spread of propaganda and a pro-Western bias and disinformation around the world, as well as running pro-US candidates in other countries around the world. That was one policy decision, right? But that policy decision in tandem with the CIA's Wurlitzer, where they're paying off journalists in other countries and here at home, these things work together. And when you couple those with a domestic policy that discourages critical thinking in our public education systems, you have a population that is not able to read between the lines, that is able to follow simple directions, and that's about it, getting newspaper stories about the world written by people who are paid to tell a pro-US perspective about a situation happening in another country that is funded largely by the USA already. So, these are the systems that lead to us not really being an informed population. So we don't really have the agency to make decisions because we don't have good information for them. Ham on Pizza, reading Manufacturing Consent right now. The book mentions our media setups opinions so that if our preferred candidate wins in South America, countries will say this country's elections have been fraudulent in the past, but is now the path to stronger democracy. And if a left-wing candidate wins, we say this country's elections have been fraudulent in the past and continues to be today. Yes, exactly. That's totally true. Yes. Now, what's really interesting is in my board a while ago on TikTok, I sent you guys some recommended reading, and it was about where this idea of manufacturing consent comes from. I can't remember the guy's name right now. I think I am getting sick. My brain is not working super well today. If you can tell that I'm not my normal self, that's why. All right, let me see. It is... It's not the Noam Chomsky book that we're talking about. Walter Lippmann's Public Opinion. That's what it is that we're talking about. I'm going to show you guys this book. There is a PDF of it online. It's a very generic name, so I always forget what it is. All right. So here's this book written by Walter Lippmann. And he's the guy who originally talked about this, about how, you only have as much information as you have to make a decision. And he talks about this. The intro to this is really interesting. It's a story about basically this island that had been like kind of a port hub, and Englishmen lived there, Frenchmen lived there, and Germans lived there. And because it took so long for information to reach them, they didn't realize World War I had happened, and they were all technically at war with each other for like weeks until after the war had started. So they were living not as people at war with each other, but as one community for weeks until this information got to them. And so that's kind of his thing, where he's like, you can't have political opinions without information. And that's the basis of the whole book. Now, his book is really interesting because his conclusion is, so we should stop trying to have democracy whatsoever, and we should just let like 12 really smart guys decide everything, which I do not agree with. I don't think that's the right solution to come out of this. But everything he talks about up to that point is correct. And I would argue, and I've said this before, that this idea can be integrated with Lenin's idea of a vanguard party. You do need people who are specifically tasked with education, with outreach, with leadership, with guidance. But you'll see that in Marxist-Leninist places, one of the first things they do is start massive public education campaigns. And I think that is the appropriate way to do this. You have people you trust to be the leaders, and they start off implementing massive education campaigns. They want you to get educated. They want your literacy rates to be high. That is why places that come under communist leadership, their literacy rates go up to nearly 100%, like very, very quickly, because they want to educate the masses so the masses can make informed decisions. So inventing reality also, that's the Parenti one, right? Yeah, Parenti. Oh yeah, somebody scroll up. So hydrate, sorry. Two hydrates. We're doing them. Right. So I do recommend this book, and I'll make you guys a tiny URL and type it in here if you guys want to read it. I'll stretch. Bye, Virgo. Thank you for everything. Sorry I'm late today. So I'll make this for you guys and share it. I really don't want to be sick, you guys. I really am like, maybe I'm just dehydrated. Maybe I'm too hydrated. Probably. I think this is the link. Let me know if it works. Yeah, this is it. Okay. So just a reminder, the conclusion this guy comes to, I happen to think is real kookball. Where he's like, and so nobody should ever try to do democracy. I'm like, well, no, I think very clearly the solution is that people should try to do more education to the masses if we truly want to pursue democracy. But okay. So I think that's very, very interesting. Oh, I did this water already. What do you guys think? Do you have any thoughts about this whole election fraud situation with Trump? Is the island real or a thought experiment? That was a real island that he talks about in the intro to this book. Hi, Bisco Witch, welcome. No one watered me for 3 days. Maybe that's it. Carney was pushing the same conclusion on his WEF speech. Okay, maybe we'll look at the Carney speech. Let's see what's up. Yeah, you wouldn't be surprised if every U.S. election is rigged in some way. And that's the thing. Even when we have fair elections, they're still rigged. They're still rigged by money. They're still rigged by information. This system is just not conducive to actual democracy, right? And that's why when I talk about democracy in Marxist-Leninist places, it's a level of democracy most people can't even fathom. Like, what do you mean you get into a room with all of your neighbors and you all just yell at each other about who you think could handle the responsibility best until a decision is made? Like, people are like, what? I'm like, yeah, that's literally how democracy starts in these places. Yeah, it's very funny. So should I look up the speech, the Carney speech? How long is that? Carney speech at Davos. We'll look at Ye Old Guardian for this one, maybe. We'll get a little overview because I haven't seen it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. All right. For much of Mark Carney's career as an economist and central banker, he existed at the nexus of global thinkers and multilateral institutions. The rock star banker was a fixture at summits where he spoke beside business leaders and the political elite, espousing the values of international cooperation and the need for open economies and shared rules. But after less than a year as Prime Minister of Canada, Carney offered a blunter assessment of the world on Tuesday. The strong do what they can, and the weak suffer what they must. In a wide-ranging speech that was at times elegiac, I've never heard this word. I've never seen this. Elegy. Okay, that makes sense. Ever related to elegy. For the predictable rules-based order, Carney laid out a doctrine for a world of fractured international norms, warning compliance will not buy safety. The old order is not coming back. We should not mourn it, he said. Nostalgia is not a strategy. The remarks, delivered to politicians, media, and business leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, were received with a standing ovation. While they did not explicitly mention Donald Trump, Carney nonetheless alluded to a growing frustration and concern that the White House is eager to dismantle and weaken the architecture of collective problem solving that has defined much of the past 8 decades. Yeah, if you're white, like, what if we ever invited the global South to be architects of collective problem solving with us? Like, we pretty much show up and we're like, yeah, privatize everything, stop paying for your people to live, and give the World Bank a ton of money. Welcome to the world. Leaders in other Western capitals have alluded to dangerous departures Trump has taken from norms, but they always return to the possibility that he can be appeased or accommodated. Mr. Carney's exposed it as simply inaccurate, said Jack Cunningham, a professor of international relations at the University of Toronto. Leaders increasingly realize that they will not be able to manage Trump for the remainder of his term, says Cunningham, and are reckoning with the fact that the systems of international order that the U.S. helped craft are crumbling. Carney is the first major Western leader to basically acknowledge the reality. A lot of leaders abroad are looking for somebody to set a direction, and this speech is planting a flag. Canada's Prime Minister warned that the great powers, a thinly veiled reference to the U.S., have started using economic integration as weapons, with tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. I'm sorry, have started? What? Oh my gosh, anonymous gifters with subs. Yay, so nice. Yay. Wait, what? Has started? This has always been how international politics has worked. This has always been the story of geopolitics. I don't understand how deluded. You know what it is, though? It's really just that white people countries are like, the United States wouldn't treat us the way they treat not white people countries, would they? And then they're all panicking. I think that's literally what's happening, right? It's like, yeah, it's just started doing it to white people. Exactly. Yeah, we have really good culture of gifting subs. Thank you, everybody who does that. In recent days, Trump has threatened to place levies on European nations that oppose his bid to seize control of Greenland. But Carney also warned against diplomatic and economic retreats, telling attendees that a world of fortresses will be poorer and less sustainable. The question for middle powers like Canada is not whether to adapt this new reality. We must. The question is whether we adapt by simply building higher walls or whether we can do something more ambitious. If you are not at the table, you are on the menu. Do you guys remember also when all the Democrats were saying this? During the election, they're like, if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. I'm on the table. Kill those kids in Gaza. And you're like, I'm sorry, what? What? So the kids in Gaza are on the menu? You're eating the kids in Gaza? What the fuck is happening, you bloodthirsty psychos? Absolutely wild. So this phrase, I have like 2024 lib speak trauma from. Much of Carney's rapid rise from economist to world leader is centered on a thesis that geographic proximity, tight economic integration, and longstanding political alliances with the U.S. no longer guarantee prosperity and security. But the speech, written by the Prime Minister himself, comes as the two nations prepare for protracted trade negotiations and Trump's repeated threats to annex Canada. Also, this is something the ACP wants to do too. Yeah, can I please see the menu first, Lord Oxfam? I'm like, what exactly? What table am I sitting at here? What are we doing? I'm vegan. Are there options? No. Carney understands that while there's no need to poke him in the eye, there's also no need to excessively flatter the president, says Cunningham. The Prime Minister knows that Trump's commitment and his words are essentially worthless. He can and often does go back on them on a whim. And so this is a position we're being forced into by growing American unreliability. Carney touted his government's recent trade mission to China, where he courted Chinese investment in Canada's oil sector and dramatically scaled back tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, the latter of which signaled a break with U.S. policy. But as Canada shifts to become more principled and pragmatic in its dealings with other nations, Carney laid out his vision for how his government and other middle power countries could navigate the tumultuous and unpredictable nature of geopolitics. Middle powers must act together because if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. Great powers can afford to go it alone. They have the market size, the military capacity, the leverage to dictate terms, he says. Middle powers do not. This is really reminding me, I don't know if any of you guys watched it, but I've recommended it a few times for a few different reasons. The Jeffrey Sachs speech that he gave to the EU Parliament, where he basically was like, do not, this was like maybe 2 years ago, where he was like, do not like hitch your apple cart, right, to hitch your wagon. I don't know what that phrase is, actually. I'm realizing I don't fucking understand this phrase at all. Basically, don't align yourself too closely with the United States, because the United States does not give a fuck about you. And the best thing you could do, EU, is try to develop yourself, not individually, but together as the EU, into a major global superpower on your own that does not rely on or talk to the United States about things. This is kind of what Jeffrey Sachs recommended. Yeah, exactly. This Pisces troll. USA threatens Venezuela, Cuba, Mexico, Colombia, crickets. Threatens Greenland. How could the United States do this to us? Exactly. It's like, okay, we're seeing very clearly. This is because it's Europe. A mad scene. What do you think of speculations that Trump is sick? Do you think it's just libs refusing to see that this is liberalism without the PR spin? Or do you think his decision-making could be impacted by health concerns? So anything I would say is speculation. I will say it's a little surprising how... he just says things that should be the quiet part out loud. Like, yeah, the CIA is in Venezuela, of course. And it could go either way. Sometimes I'm like, he's older. Maybe he forgets what's public knowledge and what's not. I forget what's public knowledge and what's not. You know, like when I'm talking sometimes, I'll say something and my organizing group will be like, it's just for us. And I'm like, no, it's just for us. My bad. So I get it. And, you know, that's just because I have ADHD. So the idea that he could be accidentally slipping up and divulging more than he should, saying the quiet parts out loud, that's very, very possible. That's a reality, certainly. But I think it's more important than that. It's not something that appears to matter to him one way or another, or to people around him. So we could speculate on the reason. Like, is he just like this, or is something wrong? But ultimately, I don't think it really makes that big of a difference, right? Because his administration doesn't see a problem with it, and it's still dictating policy, which I think is interesting. But sometimes I do wonder. Sometimes I'm like, girl, what, did he say that on purpose? Like, what? You know, and then ultimately that's what I have to tell myself. I guess it doesn't matter. I guess it doesn't matter because this is the world. And that really is what we've always said is one of the biggest differences, right, between the Republicans and the Democrats, is that they're doing the same things a lot of the time, but they're doing the same things, but they're doing them in different ways, and they talk about them differently. So he is more mask off, for better or worse, but it's the same shit. Obviously, Democrats are doing just with different methodology. All right. Carney said he would pursue a policy of variable geometry, which involves farming different coalitions for different issues based on values and interests. Carney pointed to billions spent in support of Ukraine's defense and reiterated that Canada stood firmly with Greenland and Denmark. He said his government was also seeking to link trade with Asian and European nations. This flexible, seemingly ad hoc way of developing alliances comes in stark contrast to the concrete certainties of the post-war international order that Carney has long championed. But Bob Rae, Canada's former ambassador to the United Nations, said it was the nations meant to uphold the institutions that have failed in their duties, not the institutions themselves. This just feels like massive capitalist cope, right? Massive liberalism cope. Like, the institutions would have saved us. We just did it wrong. It's like, no, I think the institutions are doing exactly what the institutions were designed to do. That's a big cope. All right. Moving on. Here we go. Superpowers like Russia and the United States have decided that they're going to take the law into their own hands. Also, Russia did not take the law into its own hands. Russia reached out to the West, to Europe, to NATO, to the United States multiple times for years and says, I don't want to go to war. I'm trying not to go to war with you. We don't want to go to war. Can we negotiate? This would make us feel comfortable. This would make us feel comfortable. What about this? Gave multiple options for NATO expansion. What if you let Russia into NATO? What if you have a demilitarized area of NATO as a buffer zone around us? Russia never decided it was going to take the law into its own hands. The United States made that decision. So it was all the United States. The United States was like, fuck you, Russia. We're not talking to you. So again, this is, slanted in how they're presenting Russia, certainly. But worth noting, it's just the United States. The Prime Minister was clear in his message. You don't abandon those institutions and you don't give up on them, but you do need to recognize that in the real world, they're very challenged. Too many countries in the world are breaking all the rules and asking everybody else to break those rules. Okay, so also this is very much like what liberalism does in the face of fascism. Everything we talked about last week, everything we talked about the week before that, they cannot imagine that the institutions are meaningless, so they double down on relying on them. Like, this is what we talked about with the Gramsci text, with the Stalin text, like, almost to a T, right? Like, this is exactly what people were doing in Italy when they confronted fascism, in Germany, when they confronted fascism. And now we're seeing it on a global stage as the Republican administration inches closer and closer towards fascism. They're like, no, the institutions will prevail. And it's like, very obviously they're not, because the institutions are designed to facilitate and allow these things to happen. So we're seeing history repeat itself over and over and over again. What? What is it? The cat has feelings. Hold, please. Hi, what are you doing? Oh, you're so stretchy. Hi, hello, what's up? She's still probably trying to bully me to feed her. But I know she already ate. Hi, Kit Kit. Okay, she ran away now. I pet her and she ran away. Sorry. So the institutions, what are the institutions? So here in the United States domestically, it would be like parliamentary institutions, right? It would be like Congress. He's not supposed to do this without congressional approval. It would be like the National Guard will stop him, you know, or I don't know, like just any sort of law, like that's against the law. Is that the law? That's dubious, the law. These kinds of things. It's like, this is not working. So internationally, what those institutions are would be the UN probably, right? And international treaties, tariffs, trade deals, trade agreements like that. So those kinds of things. All right. Ray, who saw first the fickle and erratic nature of U.S. foreign policy commitments at the UN, said the speech was both blunt in its assessments and optimistic in its call to allied nations. Carney is clear. We are not bending to nations that want to break these systems, and we will work tirelessly with other countries that feel the same way. Okay, you're not going to beat them then. Like, it's wild. It's like, you put out a game of Monopoly and you said, here are the rules. You move in a circle around the board, and somebody just grabbed their piece and put it on the finish line and said, okay, but I won. Like, they're not playing by the rules. What is you playing by the rules going to do? Like, yeah, it's not going to do anything. That's not how it works. Like, the rules only work if we all agree that those are the rules and we're playing by them, right? So this is wild. So this is pretty much, everything we talked about in the Gramsci text about liberalism and its failures to compete with fascism, in the Stalin text about parliamentarism, like the Trotsky text about parliamentarism as well. All of this is exactly what is happening here, which I think is very, very interesting. We just keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Liberals do anyway. And I think a lot of it has to do with liberals being in denial. They don't want to believe the time is now where something has to change. They don't want to believe the time is now where they have to act. Because acknowledging that means acknowledging that a total change is happening. A total shift is happening. Which is interesting because on the one hand, they campaigned on this. They campaigned on Trump is not business as usual. Trump is not business as usual. He's a uniquely bad man. And then now they're like, no, it's going to be fine. No, we don't have to do anything unique. Yes, he's a uniquely bad man, but we don't have to be unique in our approach to dealing with this, which is a contradiction, right? I don't happen to believe that Trump is a uniquely bad man. I think we've experienced many bad men like this in the past. I think the whole system is designed to create bad men like this. I think we will continue to experience bad men. But I think that his particular form of bad manism, right, does inch closer to fascism, just like Nixon's did, just like Reagan's did, right? So I think that does merit an appropriate matched response, and it's a response that liberalism is incapable of providing, very, very clearly. Now, in a social media post on Tuesday, Trump wrote that he agreed to meeting with various parties regarding Greenland while visiting Davos, reiterating his belief that U.S. interest in this island was imperative for national and world security. Carney cautioned that as nations look to strike deals with powerful nations, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what is offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty. It is the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination. I actually really like this quote. This is true, and this has a lot to do with our conversation about imperialism. Remember yesterday when we were talking about imperialism, if you were in the chat, we were talking about how many other nations, Russia, China, etc., are forced to react to the United States defensively because the United States is the world hegemon financially, right? We control things because of finance capital, and the dollar is king, and these other countries are reacting defensively. And this is exactly what Carney's saying here. They are negotiating from weakness and accepting what is offered. They can compete with each other many times on how to be the most accommodating. It's not sovereignty. Oh, stretch. I'm stretching to squinch. Okay. If people are the products of the material environment, would bad men like this exist in a communist state? Would they be made better by better conditions, or will we always need to resist them? So I am of the belief that there is no inherent good and evil in the world, right? I think some people are weirdos. I think some people can be assholes. But what we know statistically is that when people have their basic needs met, things like crime go down, right? And how we interpret crime is all obviously very, very political as well. But people are less likely to steal from you, for example, if they have everything they need. So when we look at this in an international stage, an international scope, you know, what do people feel that they need? And if you feel that all of your needs can be met within your country, that you have everything you need, you're probably not going to go seeking for more things to take over, right? But that's not everybody. I think sometimes there are people who get delusions of grandeur. They get ideas in their head they need more than they do. And I think one of the most effective tools we have in those elements is quite literally socializing. How do you socialize a culture? What kind of culture do you build? And this is something people talk about a lot when they travel. And you see it if you've ever traveled internationally. Just the way that average people are acclimated to deal with hostility or inconvenience, for example, that varies from country to country based on how you're socialized. So I think part of building a socialist society means building good socialist values. And we can see, like in the USSR, for example, freedom of speech was not valued as highly as doing the right thing. So there's that famous story about the Black American sitting on the bus in the USSR, and somebody on the bus makes a racist comment about him. The bus stops. All of the people on the bus, citizens arrest that guy, drag him off to the police station, and are like, oh my God, we are so sorry. Like, that's not acceptable here. And that is a situation that happens in the United States every single day, right? But how we're socialized around it, well, that's freedom of speech. It's annoying, but what are you going to do about it? So some people are just racist, right? There's a difference in how you're socialized to respond to those situations. So that's something we can control. And that's why we might joke about re-education camps. But those are actually, that's a kindness, right? To have educational outreach that involves how you're socialized, to develop proper social skills, to learn to think about people that aren't just yourself. You know, that is an imperative part of society that we should be doing. And in the United States, our culture is very me, right? So that probably breeds people who think that it is important to be a great man. And that's not going to be everywhere. Oh yeah, it is a cool story. It's pretty funny. I'm going to see if I can find it really fast. Again, I'm not operating at 100% today. So it's a little harder for me to do things. If anybody else knows the story too, I'm looking for it right here, but I'm having a hard time finding the exact one. I want to say that it was Du Bois, but I can't exactly remember at the moment. Maybe it was Du Bois. I'm going to see if I can search Du Bois and find it more easily. I don't think it was Du Bois. I'm trying to remember. Oh my gosh. I'm really off my game today, guys. I'm so sorry. When I find it though, I'll be sure to share it with you guys in the board on my TikTok, and maybe Virgo can share it in the Discord, because it is a really good story. And it's very, very interesting. And it's just a Black man talking about his travels through the USSR and how he was seen and felt like he was seen as a man for the first time, not just a Black man like in the United States. So finishing up this article, we should not allow the rise of power to blind us to the fact that the power of legitimacy, integrity, and rules remain strong if we choose to wield it together. So yeah, this is pretty interesting. It seems like the rest of the world continues to be in denial about the reality of geopolitics. There's obviously a lot of white supremacy involved in here, like we talked about. It's like, how could Donald Trump treat us, the other white countries, like we're one of the poors, right? The anti-communist part of the speech. Oh. Is Carney like, communism's gonna get us if we don't do this? Let me see. I'm gonna look. Thank you, tiniest boop. Okay. I'm looking. I also found this one too. That was interesting. Carney defines his doctrine. But yeah, let's look at this one somebody sent, the CBC one. in French. All right, so today I'll talk about the rupture of the world order, the end of a nice story, and the beginning of a brutal reality where geopolitics among the great powers is not subject to any constraints. Brody, Canada's Prime Minister, former head of both the Bank of England and Bank of Canada. And I just want to point out, yes, this is a description of who this man is. But also when we talked about finance capital yesterday, that's what it looks like. That sentence right there. Oh, he quoted Havel. Oh, wow. Somebody was asking me about the Velvet Revolution the other day, too. In the chat, I think. I saw somebody asking about that. Interesting. So much of the conversation around Carney bothers me because it's framing him as a great man in developing history rather than what he is an opportunist. I mean, I think what it is that liberalism wishes a man like Carney could save it, right? That's what they want. They want Carney, like, oh, maybe this guy will emerge as a leader, or to where we have to do minimal change. We have to accept minimal casualties, minimal struggle, and he'll just fix it with his great words and his reliance on the institution. He'll know what to do. That's really the vibe I'm getting from the rest of the world, that they don't know what to do. And so any charlatan who shows up and talks a good talk, right? They're like, he's going to fix it for us. So we don't have to accept the reality that something fundamentally is shifting, that the contradictions of capitalism continue to become more and more and more extreme every year, and that inevitably capitalism will devolve into fascism or evolve into socialism. And those are the options. And I think that's really what's going on here. So he says, I also submit to you that other countries, particularly the middle powers like Canada, are not powerless. We have the capacity. Okay, we talked about this, the middle powers, whatever. So what are our options? Oh, here it is. In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question. How did the communist system sustain itself? They really want capitalism to be broken up into a bunch of free markets. They won't consolidate their wealth and power again all the time. Exactly. Mad scene, as Nickelback said, and they say that a hero could save us. I'm not going to stand here and wait. I mean, I think that's what they're like, he's going to be the one. Yeah. Nickelback, I love it. So how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, the shopkeeper places a sign in his window, workers of the world unite. He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places a sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on the street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusions begin to crack. Free markets are right-wing, usually. Yeah, I mean, always. They're right-wing. But there are some situations in which market systems are employed by left-wing governments as transition phases. So, yeah. It's capitalism, yeah. It's far right. Classical liberalism. Yes. Thank you, chat. Now, Havel called this living within a lie. The illusions start to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. This is really interesting. I mean, first of all, I think all of us know this shopkeeper is like, there's one of the examples of a petty bourgeois man. Like, he's not a worker, he's petty bourgeois, right? So they don't know that this is accidentally like just confirming Marxism, right? Which I think is funny and interesting. Yes, the example in the speech is, or of Havel, right? The essay is about what the petit bourgeois does, and we know them to do, right? We know that. So that's funny. He is not a worker of the world. He is a shopkeeper, and there is a difference worth noting. But also, what I think is interesting, obviously this is foolish. How did the communist system sustain itself? Through planned economies. This is not just this belief everybody had. But on the flip side, what we see is that the belief in capitalism actually does take faith. It takes faith, right? Because you do not see the material positive effects of it in your life as an average person. In communism, they saw material effects, right? They saw that they had housing all the time. It might not be great housing right out of the gate, but they had houses, right? This one, sorry. They saw that they had food. They saw that their life expectancy in the USSR went from 35 years in Russia up to surpassing the United States in one person's lifespan. they saw that their literacy rates went from 35% to 100%. These people saw a tangible material impact of the successes of communism in their life. But it won't do it again. I can't figure out when. Why isn't it doing it now? Yeah. So, it's just interesting because it's we saw material things, benefits to the USSR that made people want to keep it. Now, in capitalism, we don't. You don't see that. You see medical debt. You see credit card bills. You see increasing rates of homelessness around you. You see your loved ones not able to afford very basic things they need to live. You see your grocery. You see your bank account overdrawn when you want to go buy groceries. You see this, right? So the only thing keeping the institution of capitalism alive for the average worker is the exact same kind of manipulation that's misattributed to communism here. Right? It's projection. It takes faith for the average person, the average worker, to believe in capitalism. Because you don't have anything tangible showing you it's good. Right? If I asked you today, what about capitalism today shows you it works? How do you know capitalism works? If somebody's asked me that, I'd be like, oh, I have a house. I live in something. That's good. Most of the time when I've been hungry, I could afford food. But, there were times when I didn't have a house. And there were times when I couldn't afford food. But right now I can, so I feel lucky. And then if you ask me, are you certain you will always have a house and always have food under capitalism? I could not tell you yes. I cannot tell you that. I've had periods of my life where I was homeless, where I was hungry. I cannot tell you that. I knew that for certain. So I just have to believe that I will. I have to have faith that I will. And that is how the myth persists, right? So it's very, very interesting. It takes faith in capitalism. And that's what we see happening with Carney, right? Carney is like, the institutions will save us. I swear. We've just been using them wrong. And it's like, no, the institutions are not going to save you, babe. The institutions, they fall apart in the face of fascism every single time. The institutions of liberalism, of capitalism, fall apart in the face of fascism. You are witnessing it happen again for the third time in history, right? You didn't learn from Italy. You didn't learn from Germany. You're not learning now. It's not going to save you this time either. Why would you think something changed? Nothing has changed. So I haven't seen the memes, but that's pretty wild because this is, very clearly an anti-communist position. This is very clearly a liberalism will save us position, which we all know to not be true. We all know that's not true. Very, very fascinating. So, I don't know. Interesting. But I think that if it's like a Comrade Carney thing, I think that has to do with the optimism. The liberal optimism is really one of denial. It's an optimism of denial. They don't want to have to do things the hard way. They want to believe there's still an easy way to do things, right? So why not include Japan? Japan too. You're right. You know what? You are right. Japan's was interesting because I guess it was defeated by communism as well, but by the USSR, by World War II. So a little bit different because the phrase I can't fucking remember. You hitched your wagon to an apple cart. You hitched your apple cart to a wagon. They globbed on to Germany. And they're like, us too, friend. Hey, twin, us too. So they kind of fell together. But they, were also amplified by Germany. But you're right. Japan as well. Angel, bye. Thanks for hanging out. Final words. I hate Japan. All my homies hate Japan. My partner does not hate Japan. My partner, anarchist who loves Japan. So, next time they try to tell you I'm divisive, that I'm not tolerant, you can tell them that. All right? No, Japan is not currently imperialist. Japan actually has a really interesting relationship to finance capital because Japan was using modern monetary theory for a really long time, which was super interesting. So they have actually a very unique state control to their economy that's still capitalist. I was like, maybe inching towards fascism in some capacity is actually their economic model as well, currently. But it is interesting, but it's unique. You want to visit Japan? That's okay. We won't judge you. Chinese communists were integral into beating Japanese. You're totally right. Miller nerd. Yes, thank you. Thank you for adding that. Duh. They really were. No, that's true. And Japan obviously did horrifying things in China. Horrifying things. I would say that the moment that I was like, I think I will defend China at all costs. It was that same year, actually. It was the year I graduated from college. And two things happened that year that I will never forget. Number one, I started working in international manufacturing. And it was the same year that the labor code overhaul happened in China. And a lot of the workplaces that I was freelancing at were dealing with that. And the way they were talking to me, they were like, you're really weird about China. Like, you seem like you're racist against Chinese people. Because I would be like, well, it's not ethical to manufacture in China. And they were like, what the fuck are you saying? Like, what are you talking about? And I literally had to have a sit down at places I worked because they thought I was being weird about China. They're like, you're being really weird about Chinese people. Like, why do you think that white people are capable of some magic ethical manufacturing that Chinese people aren't capable of? Like, do you think Chinese people don't care about themselves? Like, do you think that they don't, like, what? It's not like we're owning and running white American-led sweatshops here. Like, these are Chinese people who own these places, who run them together, who manage them, like, and they've had this massive overhaul in their labor code specifically to avoid people like us taking advantage of them. Like, you're being really fucking weird about China, basically. So that was the first thing that happened. I was like, oh shit, maybe I'm being weird about China, right? And the second thing is that was the same year that I read about the rape of Nanking. And that was the year I really learned about that. And I was like, oh my God, okay. Yeah, I defend China. I always defend China. I defend China like it's nobody's business. I am China-pilled. I am pro-China, all the time. So yeah, that was really when I was like, okay, so I've come to understand, like, China has been playing defense its whole life, its whole existence, right? Since white people discovered it, since Japan got discovered by white people and then was like, we want to do white people shit too. We're going to do it in China. China's had its back against the wall, and then seeing what they've managed to accomplish with their back against the wall is inspiring. You remember people in Cheektopia lookbook and New Days, they made these xenophobic posts, yeah. And you'll see, if you ever saw my lookbook or my Cheektopia, I kind of pushed back about that a little bit. I was that because that was before I was still kind of China-pilled during that phase. I was starting. Yeah, Nanking, where a Nazi was horrified and helped the Chinese. I mean, it was bad. The rape of Nanking, I still maintain, is the worst thing ever documented in human history. That's the worst thing people have ever done to each other, I think, if I had to choose. Yeah. So, you heard China was full of child labor? No. Their minimum work age is 16. It's not full of child labor. That's a lie made up by the West. And it's very rare for people to work at age 16. And actually, it's so rare, in fact, that the United States tries to spin it like a youth unemployment crisis when we talk about it. Look at this. We're like, why don't their young people work? Because it's just not common there. So, look, they're always like, oh, 20% of young people 16 to 24 don't have jobs. But that's because in China, it's not very common to have a job until after you graduate from college. And it is, harder to break into certain industries, sure, but not like that. So yeah, China doesn't have a child labor problem. We totally made that up to discredit them. The factory that I manufacture in for my job, the youngest person working in that factory is 21 years old. Like, it's very uncommon to have people younger than 22 even working somewhere. So yeah, young people working is not heartwarming. Exactly. It's a symptom of economic malaise. And that's totally true. And they don't have that there. They should not work. Yeah. So kids' education is seen as important there. Right. So they want you to focus on school. You live with your family maybe a little longer. And what ends up happening, the reason why homeownership rates are so high is that a lot of people in China own their family homes in the countrysides, but then end up working in the city. So they will have an apartment in the city that they live at while they're working, and they own their home in the country. And they'll go back to their family home or their home in the countrysides for weekends or vacations and things like that. So a lot of people in China actually have two homes. They have their family homes that they own, and then they have their apartments that they live in and run. Yeah, your friend from China was like, why'd you get a job at 14 instead of your parents taking care of you? Yeah. What's up with Peace and Freedom Party? So I'm registered Peace and Freedom Party. I've been registered since 2004. And I love Peace and Freedom Party. I volunteer for Peace and Freedom Party. So they are California's historic socialist party with electoral ballot access. So if you have a socialist party in California and you engage in electoral politics, odds are you've run candidates on the California Peace and Freedom Party. It's like a coalition thing. So right now they're currently running 5 socialists out here in California. 4 of them I know are Marxist-Leninists specifically, running on a Lenin model of electoral engagement. And they're the fastest growing political party in California, which I think is really cool. Peace and Freedom Party is the fastest growing political party right now in California. So they actually in the 1960s used to run the Black Panthers. That's like our history for being a socialist and in particular Marxist-Leninist. You guys know the Black Panthers were Marxist-Leninists, despite what people try to tell you. They come out to our events in California, our Marxist-Leninist events, they'll tell you they're a Marxist-Leninist. They are Marxist-Leninists, and they ran on the California Peace and Freedom Party as well when they were running for office. So, they're currently running 5 candidates. They're running, I'll show you guys. Should I show you guys really fast? This is what I do with my volunteer work, so I can show you this. We're talking about domestic stuff right now. Come to me. Load. Okay, so this is Ramsey Robinson, who's running for governor, and he's the one that if you were in here earlier, his housing program, right, his platform's really good, obviously, but it's just a standard Marxist-Leninist platform, honestly. It talks about wealth issues, the owning class, etc. He wants to declare a housing emergency immediately and force people who own more than 10 houses to sell them in California so that people can, Gordon Ramsay, a little different, so that people can actually live in them, create 1.4 million units of affordable public housing, declare a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, declare a rent freeze, tax 200 billionaires here 2% more, and it'll fully fund healthcare. So no premiums, no copays, no deductibles, everything free for everybody, including gender affirming care, reproductive care, elder care. Abolish medical debt and make it illegal to have medical debt in the state of California, and build elderly care facilities like they have in China, fully funded free schools, including all colleges, and full rights for immigrants, no deportations, enforcing California as a true sanctuary state. You guys might not know this, but right now our Democratic leaders in LA, Karen Bass, for example, oversaw the police, and the police facilitated ICE. They are not supposed to do that. That's illegal according to our state law. We're like our city law. We're a sanctuary city. Our elected officials are not supposed to allow places like the police department to assist in ICE, and they did, and that's a violation of our state law or our local law. How will I stay a millionaire if I can only rent 10 houses? Joke's on you, I only have 9. I'm a baby millionaire. It doesn't affect me. Talking about building a statewide public energy system, making all public transit free across the entire state. And also another person who's running wants to get our high-speed rail project back on track from California. San Francisco to LA has had this high-speed rail project that's just stalled out for forever. Guaranteed union jobs and living wages, $30 an hour statewide. Control AI stealing people's jobs, and the war on Black America, including full reparations for slavery, and the militarization of the police, full rights for LGBTQ people, including reproductive rights and gender-affirming health care, and divesting California from Israel. So that's the platform. So it's this guy, Ramsey Robinson. I'm a mom and pop millionaire. And then it's Alice Steck for lieutenant governor. Let's see if I can pull everybody up. I think Alice Steck just got a website. She's cool. I know everybody wants to vote for Oliver Ma. I don't know anything about him. I do know about Alice Steck, though. So I'm going to pull everybody up for you guys and show you. This is my volunteer work because we're in election season, so I do a little electoral. And I will say it's wild. Because I do canvassing, I do door knocking, I flyer, I petition. I do this all the time, though. Not during election seasons, too. I'm like, become a communist today. Knock, knock, knock. Hi. And I will say that Lenin was right. Who knew in talking about electoral politics as a way to engage with the masses about socialist consciousness and really get them to understand socialism. People are way more willing to talk to you about socialism and communism even and politics during election seasons for some reason. Average everyday people, it's just like their brains are turned on or something like that. It's wild. So I understand why we have to do this. You know? Do you volunteer work for Vote Socialist? Yes. Okay, yes. So a mad scene. You are correct. So I talk about Peace and Freedom Party because that's just the electoral volunteer work I do. That's not who I consider my like actual party, because Peace and Freedom is a coalition. So you'll see a lot of different socialist parties work with Peace and Freedom. So I work with them just because I've been into what they had going on since 2004. But that's not who I consider my organizational party. When I say I organize, I don't organize with I don't consider that Peace and Freedom. I consider that just electoral volunteer work, not my actual organizing. Does that make sense? So this would be like, it would be like if you were registered with the Democratic Party for electoral work, but then you were in DSA, right? Like the Democrats would be your electoral thing, I guess. And then the DSA would be like who you organized for. It's like that. So I'm in a communist, Marxist-Leninist, revolutionary Marxist-Leninist group. I don't say which one on the internet. Because I don't want, they're like good people and I don't want them getting fucked with because of my internet presence. But then also for electoral stuff, I'm registered Peace and Freedom and I do some volunteer work with them as well. Green Party in the UK, I don't know about, but Green Party in the United States, I'm fine with them. I like them. They're okay. I like them. PSL, they do work with Peace and Freedom Party and I like them. I think they're great. I know a lot of people don't like them because they're more... like they play by the rules a lot. Like, so if you're at a protest, people will be like, I don't like the PSLs always like, stay on the sidewalk, don't go over there, don't break the law, blah, 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 blah. But I think a lot of people forget, like, Cheerla, Code Pink, and PSL have all been under federal investigation since June of last year. And out of those, PSL is the only Marxist-Leninist org, communist org under investigation. So if I was them, I'd be playing by the law too right now, because you have to pick and choose your battles, right? Like, do you want to get all of your people arrested for walking outside of a designated zone at a protest? Like, who does that benefit? So I understand why. So some people don't like them because of that, but you know, they're dealing with something that no other communist org in the United States is dealing with right now, which is a literal federal investigation just for being communists. So them and FRSO are the two largest national Marxist-Leninist groups, and I support you joining either of those. I think, and FRSO I see out at things too. We do a lot of coalition work in California. So I just want to say, so in California, multiple different communist and socialist parties will be together doing the same things. We do that a lot. We're really trying to build a strong coalition thing out here in California, and it's really cool. So I see all these orgs out all the time. Even the Trotskyist orgs, it's hard for me to say something bad about a Trotskyist org, even though I don't believe with them in the same things they believe. We have different politics. They are out at everything, and we do a lot of work with them. And like, it's just not my immediate focus. Isn't going to be like talking shit about orgs unless I think they're actively harmful. So the two orgs I think are actively harmful: Bobavakian. I would never tell you to join Bobavakian. That's a cult. And the ACP. I think they're actively harmful. So those are the only two orgs I'll ever tell you not to join. You know, same thing. I don't like DSA, but if you're like, DSA is all that's near me, I joined DSA, I'm still going to think that's better than not joining anything, because I'm an org person. I think every socialist should be in an org. So that's kind of, but I have a personal bias towards that. Some socialists don't like orgs. That's not, I think everyone should be in an org, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I don't know, any other questions you can ask for sure. You can definitely ask. I think a lot of people are recruiting right now too. I would say I would prefer you join a Marxist-Leninist org instead of a Trotskyist org if there's one near you. And there's local orgs in every city too. So PSL and FRSO are just the two biggest national ones for Marxist-Leninists. But you'll probably find many if you live in a big city. You'll probably find several smaller ones too. Okay, so here's who's running on Peace and Freedom for our electoral thing. We had Ramsey Robinson for governor. Buff fork. And then we have Alice Steck for lieutenant governor. She's really cool. She's OBGYN doctor. She's the one that I'm not sure if she's explicitly a Marxist-Leninist or not, or just a socialist. But she'll tell you she's a socialist. She's been a socialist since the 1960s or whatever. Then we have Lalo Vargas. He is actually polling neck and neck with Democrats right now to win for insurance commissioner, and he wants to abolish private insurance companies. And just have public insurance, which is so cool. So I think this is awesome. Lalo could do it. For the ballot, if you vote, his first name is Eduardo. So Eduardo Lalo Vargas. He's killing it right now. So we love Lalo. I actually hosted an event for Lalo at my house. So if you follow a bunch of TikTok communists, a bunch of them came to my house for this event. We had Lalo out. It was awesome. It was really, really cool. So I like him. Okay, so Megan, her campaign's who I volunteer with. So if you look at Megan's social media, you'll see like I film videos in my house sometimes. I do the voiceover. So I volunteer for her. She's a bus driver, school bus driver union president. And also she's running for state controller. So she wants to do things like get public transportation back on track, do all sorts of things. Pokey Preet's been to my house for that event. Yeah. Yeah, so Megan's awesome. She's the one I specifically do the most work for, but I'll help with other people too. But she's the one that I do the most for. And then Frank Lara. I love Frank. Frank's like the sweetest person on the planet. Frank's running for superintendent of public education. So if you're in California and you do electoral politics, I definitely recommend Peace and Freedom Party. I think that it's, if you're going to do it, they're the ones. They're the ones. They're actual socialists. They're kooky too sometimes. Like one year they ran Roseanne Barr and I did not vote for them. I was like, you just run some weirdo old head shit there. I don't know what that is. I'm not doing it. But because it's a coalition. So it's so hard to get electoral access, like ballot access is very, very hard to get because you're constantly getting sued by the Democratic Party. It's very, very challenging. So the fact that they've secured ballot access almost consistently every single election since the 1960s when they ran the Black Panthers is major. But that means sometimes they do kooky stuff, like they'll run Roseanne Barr as a PR stunt to get enough votes to stay on the ballot if they don't have any real candidates running. Now, I will say lately that hasn't happened. In the past few elections, the past 12 years or so, there's been enough real interest in them to keep the party going and alive, and people are really into them. So right now they are running serious candidates again, which is great, and I'm very, very happy about that. So, but at the time, back in the day, Roseanne Barr did this thing where she claimed to be a communist for like 6 months. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was so weird. She literally was like, no, like I'm a radical Marxist for like 6 months, and then she totally changed. And this was like a while. I gotta look up this Roseanne thing. If you guys don't remember it, this was kooky. 2012. And then she changed her whole politics and was like, never mind, I'm a Trumper. Haha. So she ran as president with Peace and Freedom Party in 2012. And I did not vote for her this year. I did not vote Peace and Freedom this year. We need more socialism, she was saying. She said that her campaign was very, very serious. She tried to debate Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. She said the American people are being given a false choice because it's the choice of the lesser two evils. It's still a false choice. It's... And then Roseanne Barr owed this Green Party woman $4,300, and that became the news. I don't know. It's very, very weird. Anyway, so this happened. This was strange, and it was like a weird 6-month thing, and I was like, not for me. But that's the only time since 2004 I've ever seen them do anything weird. So, I don't know. The devil games, we got a troll in the chat. True socialism, Marxism is authoritarian. Oh, that's so funny. It was 2012 for Roseanne that happened. If I struggle with political rage, as you become more theory aware and committed to leftism, you feel like you're going crazy. I was listening to the news on the bus. I was almost shaking. I'm not an angry person. And it's just like got to you like nothing else has. I mean, yeah, it'll do that to you. Mostly I get frustrated with the American population. I'm like, the information is there and these people just choose not to learn, right? And that can be really frustrating for me. And then to see the extent of the lies, to really understand how much we're lied to. I mean, like, random person just popped in the chat, right? And it's like, Marxism's authoritarian. And, anybody who knows anything about politics is just like, oh my God, like eye roll, like authoritarian. Oh, like that. It's like a meaningless fucking buzzword. It means nothing. And it's hard. You lose faith in people. But I think the thing you have to remember is that in all of this, the thing that's inspiring is there's a solution. So many people feel political apathy, political burnout. They think there's no options. And we at least know there is a solution we know works. So our task now is to get people on board with it, right? which is a hard task, but at least we know what we're fighting for. We know what we're working for, right? Ghost in this hell, reading and seeing the same assholes doing the same asshole shit 100 years later, just creating the conditions for rage. Yeah. And when you're like, we solved this problem already, we know, and nobody will read it. It can be maddening, but you have to remember that we know the solution. We know the solution. Okay, let's see who I voted for in 2012. Let's see. Oh, that's the year I voted for Obama. I didn't vote for Obama in 2008. I voted for him in 2012. I'm misremembering my own history. I knew I voted for him one year. And it was 2012. I thought it was 2008, but it was not. Wow. Huh. So there you go. That was the year I voted for him. And it's because Peace and Freedom didn't run a viable candidate. Interesting. So many people you talk to believe that socialism won't work. How do you combat that? Ask them what their metric is for working. And I do that. I say, well, what's your metric for working? Because mine is literacy rates and life expectancy and infant mortality. And everywhere communists have been in power, right? Literacy rates and life expectancy have gone up and infant mortality has gone down. So to me, it's working. Home ownership rates, that's another good one. Home ownership rates are very, very high. That to me is a sign that it's working. But people have different metrics, right? I mean, most people you'll find don't have a metric. They've just been told it doesn't work. They don't know what something working or not working would look like. But maybe they do have a totally wacky system. Maybe they're like, well, I can't own 26 yachts, so it doesn't work. In which case you can be like, you know what? If that's your metric for a system working, if you can own 26 yachts, you're right. It does not work for that. Agree to disagree. But most people don't. Yeah, Madeline Pendleton spreads misinformation about Madeline Pendleton. It was 2012. I did. Yeah. So, yeah. Is there a link? Is it a link to the Discord? Yeah, there's definitely up higher in the comments is a link to the Discord. Okay, so I gotta jump off. I gotta do some volunteer work. I also have to see if I'm sick or not. I do feel like my brain's not working at full capacity, and I think you guys can tell compared to my normal streams. I'm a little like, blah, blah, blah. So we'll see. If I decide I am sick and I need to rest, I will do video game streaming from bed, and it'll be very, very different. So, yeah. Do we want to raid someone before we leave? Anybody? Sim stream. It'll be a sim stream if I am sick in bed, actually. We'll see. I could have just been nauseous. It could have been a little tummy tum. Who knows? Who knows? Okay. All right. If nobody has any suggestions for who to raid, I'm just going to close the thing. So I'll give you guys a few minutes. Raid me. Thank you guys for sticking around for a real loose episode. Real weird episode. Hydrate. I'll hydrate. All right. Tomorrow, if I'm feeling better, it'll be more normal. All right. Bye, guys.